Special thanks to all our Patreon members. If you too would like to have your name horribly mispronounced by Wade, you can become a Patreon at patreon.com/Sci-gasm podcast. Just like these people.
Jelena Milousnik, Craig Porter, Ryan G, Kevin Turman, Robert Condon, Jessica Menendez, Sarah Talk Podcast, Daniel Rahman, Alexandra Phil, The Shazza, Brendan Zare, Frank Aleknowitz, Cheese Dick McDouche Nozzle Esquire, and Kemiel Winnitz.
Well done.
Thanks. Enjoy the episode. The open road. Isn't this the best, buddy? Want to play another game?
Not really.
All right. I spy with my little eye something beginning with R.
Is it the road?
You win again, Byrne.
Can't believe I have to spend 10 hours in this car with you. Why did you start a fight with the pilot?
Well, I wanted to fly the plane.
That's not what fight or flight means.
Well, they put me in a bad mood from the get-go by referring to me as baggage.
They were referring to the luggage I was carrying.
Oh. All right, ready? Let's play another game. I spy with my little eye.
Fuck's sake.
Hey, mate.
G'day, mate. What's going on?
Not much, buddy.
Usual stuff, week to week.
Week to week, yeah.
Researching some science.
Researching some science.
Being a skeptic.
Being a skeptic.
What a
kicking
life
some
we
ass.
lead.
What I know. Just got to push all these women away from us.
All right, so this week I wanted to talk about our instincts versus learned behaviours.
Okay, so what do you mean by instinct versus learned behaviours is stuff that we instinctively do as opposed to things that we've learned over time. So how we respond to a situation the way our parents would have? Or
Yeah, it can be a variety of things. So instincts, we also call them innate behaviours as well.
Okay.
These are actions or responses or, some sort of interaction with the environment that we don't have to learn. In other words, we do it correctly the first time.
Like a
straight
baby, like a mother nursing a baby, the baby naturally knows to go for the female's breast.
Yeah,
milk. Yeah,
absolutely. So the baby latches on. That's a great example. Other examples are things like reflexes are kind of innate behaviours. You touch something hot, you immediately draw it away. The blinking reflex as well. Something throws something in your face, you blink instinctively. You don't have to learn it.
Not eating Tide Pods.
Yeah, that's right. Sleeping as well. You don't really need to learn how to sleep. You just know how to sleep, okay? And all of these things. Eating is another one. Probably not eating Tide Pods specifically, but yeah, that sort of stuff. Now, learned behaviours are at the other end. Those are the things that you acquire through trial and error, those behaviours. You have to work out how to do them. You're probably not doing it correctly the first time.
Like hunting and things like that.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, usually when we talk about this instinct versus a learned behaviour, we're usually talking about the animal kingdom, okay? Mm-hmm. And the reason we usually talk about the animal kingdom is because it's really easy. We can tell an animal's instinct versus an animal's behaviour because we don't really disagree on it, because you can't really ask an animal if it learnt something. So it's all observation. We don't, Dr. Dolittle isn't real.
What?
So if an animal learns something, we can go, okay, it's learned it because it wasn't doing it from a baby's age. Whereas if you're a human, you can actively ask them, when have you done this? Some human will reply, oh, I've always done this. So does that make it instinctual? Or some people reply, oh, my dad taught me how to do this. But that might be, there's an element of instinct involved as well. So it's a lot more difficult. And this is where I want to go today. I want to go into less the animal behaviours and more into the human instinct versus the learned behaviours.
Cool.
Okay. Now, there is quite a large amount of debate over how much is really instinctive for humans. If you look at us as babies, we're pretty fucking useless, Human babies can't do shit. You're not leaving a human baby in the forest and then coming out 7 years later. That's
one of the interesting things, isn't it, about humans, is you wonder how we've managed to survive so long and be so prosperous when we're so useless as infants. Where you look at like a puppy, within 8 weeks, a
run
dog,
around.
a wolf pup can run around and obviously not be as effective as hunting, but can still...
It play hunts, it pounces,
Yeah, exactly.
It's got all those things in it.
Where
Yeah.
an 8-week-old human is...
Well, look, like horses and giraffes and some of those ruminant animals, half an hour after being born, they're walking and they have to be able to run with the pack, you know what I mean? That's incredible. Humans take bloody year to learn how to walk.
Yeah,
you know?
we're so slow.
Even crawling is months and months and months.
But
And
even like our gestation period as well, like 9 months, that's a huge amount of time for a woman to be carrying around a child. Like,
yeah, I know. It's quite long. And there's a lot of animals that breed much quicker than we do, but they're better developed when they're born. Like, we are pretty crap when we're young, you know? Yeah, it's a bit
we
weird.
don't have like a pouch or anything like that.
Yeah, I know. We just have to carry them around. Thank God we're bipedal, so we've got arms free or everything. Else kids would be in a lot of trouble. We're not even hairy. You can't even hang on to us like a lot of the other monkeys and things.
Sounds dirty. Thank God we're bipedal because kids would be in a lot of trouble. That does not sound like a good sentence.
It does. It sounds dirty that it is. Maybe I should translate that.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we walk on 2 legs and have our arms free to carry our young.
There you go.
I never realised how science language does sound kind of gross.
I'm much more comfortable with that sentence than the previous one.
Oh dear. All right, so let's get into like what do we mean by instinct when we're talking humans. So there was a 2010 press release from a professor at Indiana University who considered behaviours which are common across all individuals in the species and tendencies which reflect, quotation marks, the way people are, should be considered instincts. You know, and like, I don't know about that. This implies things like grieving, because everyone grieves. Storytelling, so everyone tells stories within cultures. Creativity as well, you do something, you create, and everyone's sort of creative. Every culture makes something new. That would argue that all of these things are instinctual rather than learned behaviours. And like, frankly, that's a bit social sciencey for me. And like, you know how I feel about social science.
Yes, you hold it in such high regard.
Oh my God, you know, that's crap, I'm sorry. Like, but like this sort of debate over what's instinctual and what's learned has been going on for centuries. And like this idea of what's instinctual versus what's learned has been used to justify like teaching practices common today in schools. And it's also been used to justify war atrocities. You know, this is how they are. Things like slavery. They have a natural state of submission. You know, that was used to justify these things. It's their instinct. It's not a learned behavior. So this debate over what's instinct versus what's learned is actually pretty central to our social structure.
Oh, that's an interesting take, isn't it?
It
I've
is.
never thought about it in that light.
Yeah, it is. It kind of gets a bit heavy in it sometimes. So I went back to the lighter end and started having a look at some other stuff because I didn't want to
Like
get into slavery.
Yeah.
So masturbation is definitely instinctual. I keep telling you this.
It's my instincts, Mom. Leave me alone.
I can't help it.
I can't help it.
Do you have to do it while I'm in the room?
Do you have to do it at the dinner table in front of your family?
I reckon there are some people that just have a bad... Anyway, that's another story.
Yeah, no, there are sex addicts and stuff like compulsive masturbators. They very prevalent.
Are they whipping it out in
In
public?
fact, there may be one in
this.
this room. No, I could imagine people with like sex addiction stuff. It would be so just debilitating, like having that drive the whole time. It'd be terrible.
It would be, but there are worse things to be addicted to, I reckon, too.
Well, not really. Like, think about it.
Oh, come on, mate.
Oh no,
sex addiction is worse than heroin.
Well, I'm just saying though, but like you wouldn't be able to have like a relationship where, you know, there was that monogamy and trust and stuff like that. Like you wouldn't be able to, you know, it'd be very hard to find a partner and stuff.
Oh
like that.
yeah, definitely would. Like, I feel for a lot of sex addicts out there, but you know, they get a lot more sex than I do as well. So
at the same time, I hate them. Yeah.
so I'm somewhat reserved.
Yeah, but you wouldn't. That wouldn't be, anyway, that's for a
Good
different time.
Excellent tangent. All right, well, let's get back on. So, how can we assess what behaviours are learned and what is actually instinctive? You know, that's the crux of it. To determine what's instinctive and what's learned, you have to be able to somehow conduct an assessment. And one way we can do that is to remove a child from all human contact and then observe what they do differently and what they do the same to other children. Now, from an ethical standpoint, it's probably a big no-no.
I was about to say, this doesn't sound like it got past the ethics.
Probably not the best experimental design. You know, like a lot of issues that would be raised by the people. Like I'm sure there's some mad scientists out there that would like to give this a go, but I can't see them getting funding from too many places for this.
No.
But luckily or unluckily, depending on how you look at it, there are some historical examples, case studies, where human babies have been raised with little or no contact with other humans.
Yeah.
And we can start having a look at some of those behaviours, and that allows us to assess what we can determine as instinctive. Now, I'm going to run through a few of these cases, because I think they're fucking fascinating. A lot of them refer to as feral children. I don't really like that name. I think it's harsh, you know? But these are feral children, as in they weren't raised in society. They were raised external to it. Perhaps the most famous case of these was in India, where there's two sisters, Kamala and Amala, and they were raised by a wolf or a she-wolf. Okay, now they were first discovered. They thought the children were ghosts. This is back in like the 1800s. Okay, so they found a wolf pack deep in the forest in India, and they found two kids, and the people who discovered thought these two kids are ghosts. Okay, they look pale, they look weird, they're all disheveled and everything, and they freaked out. After revisiting the wolf pack, noticing the ghosts were still there, they went, holy shit, these are actually children.
I like how it's the human instinct to go, ghosts, and it's like, not maybe it's a person. It's like, no, it has to be something supernatural.
Yeah, no, these were kids, and the thing that freaked them out about it was, like, these kids they thought were supernatural because these kids were pale, they were young, they walked on all fours, they howled, they would bite people that tried to get close to them as well, and that was their natural response. Instead of hitting and striking out, they would try to bite them and things like that too. So what the, I suppose you call them discoverers of these kids, is they actually shot the she-wolf and the pack and then took the children to an orphanage. What they found when the kids went to the orphanage is that they actually preferred to stay with the dogs around the orphanage rather than the other children in this orphanage as well. Okay, now there was another case also in India of a guy called Shamdeo, same one, another wolf raised by a wolf.
What is it with these Indians and wolves?
I don't know. Apparently, I think there's just it's probably going to sound pretty callous, a lot of kids in India, and these are like 1800s, early 1900s and things like that. This kid, more recently, was discovered in 1972. Okay? Now, he was 4 years old when he was raised. We don't really know how much time he was in being raised by wolves as well. He also walked on all fours. He was very good at hunting chickens. Don't know. He ate dirt as well. So, you know how dogs will eat dirt to get a daily dose of vitamins. And he's also reported to have cravings for blood. Now, he learned some sign language, but a bit like the other two kids discovered in India, this Shamdeo kid died very, very young as well. So it became very difficult to do long-term studies on
just because their bodies weren't behaving like a normal human.
They was probably so destroyed, so wrecked. There's had these probably consumed things that weren't really for human consumption. There was a whole range of things. Because it's early, they died young. We don't really know what they died from either. Now, there's another case.
Sad.
Yeah, it is a bit sad. Now, another one called Oksana Malaya. It's going to get sadder from here. I'm just going to let you know. Oksana Malaya from the Ukraine. Her parents were alcoholics. They were fuckwits, basically. And they totally ignored her. So she was put in the backyard with a bunch of dogs, and she was essentially raised by these dogs. She curled up with these dogs, and that might have actually saved her life. They kept her warm. They kept her fed. Now, when she was finally discovered, after quite a number of years living with these dogs, obviously got her taken off her parents, and she went to live in an orphanage too. But she ran on all fours. She panted like a dog. She barked. And even with years and years of therapy, she's still alive. She's over 30 years old now. She still has a very limited vocabulary, something similar to like a 3, 4, 5-year-old. And she is under constant supervision in a care facility now. So she still can't operate as a human after being raised by these dogs. She still has this innate canine behaviours.
I wonder, if she would be happier with the actual dogs, like in an actual pack.
Apparently, in this care facility, she derives a lot of joy from raising other animals and dealing with other animals, and then she's under constant supervision, but she's been made responsible for some of the agricultural things like cows they've got at this place, and that's where she seems to spend most of her time and get her most enjoyment from. Now, there was another boy in Russia, so these are all dog related, right? So raised by dogs. How good are dogs?
They're the best.
They're looking after us. God, they're great. There was another one, Prava, who was a boy from Russia who was found in 2008. Now, his mum obviously had a bit of a screw loose. She kept him in a room full of birds, and she was his only contact. But when I say contact, I mean she'd bring him food. She never abused him, but she'd bring him food, and that was really it. So when authorities found him, all he could do was chirp, and if chirping didn't get the response he desired, he started flailing his arms like a bird flapping its wings. And that was it. That's all he could understood. He's still now, even in 2008, he's still under care now. Like, this is 10 years ago, and he's still not able to interact fully with humans.
Well, but you look at, just the cognitive development and stuff like that of someone who's missed those important years of the social development and interaction. Like you'd have to learn it all from the get-go, and it's like...
That's it. He's learning from dogs or, in this case, birds.
And developing these skills as your brain is developing, you have a look at someone who picks up, say, a sport or something later in life. Very rarely will they ever be very good at the sport or become a professional. It's those that start from a really young age that generally are the best sports people around.
Yes, and we can see these learned behaviours in these people. There's my last case here is John Senbanya. Apparently fled into the Ugandan jungle after witnessing some horrific things with his parents. Like his parents, again, were alcoholics, were quite violent. His house ended up getting burned down, and apparently as an infant, after fleeing to the Ugandan jungle, he was raised by monkeys. Now, once again, a bit like all the other cases, he has very poor language skills, but he's able to sing, so monkeys can be quite vocal and communicate each other, so singing's quite a thing. But his diet now is also very similar to the simians, these monkeys. He likes fruits and berries and things like that. He's not a meat eater. He won't eat some of the wheats and processed foods that we have. His diet is geared towards what he was taught to eat. Same with a lot of these other kids that were raised. They prefer to eat raw meat. Some of the ones raised by wolves and things like that. Taste for blood. Now, if you have a look at all of these cases, we start to sort of see what is instinctive in humans and what is learned. So we look at this need to belong to a group. That must be instinctive, because every single case the human would not have survived if it wasn't able to find a group that was able to take them in, care for them, and relate to them, whether it's birds or monkeys or wolves. So that suggests that this desire to belong is instinctive.
Makes sense.
Now, the other thing we look at might suggest that language is more taught. Communication is instinctive. We have this need to communicate to each other, which makes sense. A lot of animals do that. Oh. They might communicate through different ways, but our communication is still instinctive. It's verbal and it's body language.
Yeah.
So whether you're flailing your arms and chirping or barking or howling or whatever it is. But what we find is once that initial state of communication is locked in, it's very difficult to break that and learn a new language or learn how to communicate as a human.
Yeah.
Like all these people have trouble communicating with people, probably no trouble communicating as a bird or as a dog or as a monkey or anything like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. The other thing that I found interesting, it seems like locomotion. So even walking isn't an instinctive behavior. That's learned.
Come on, do the locomotion with me.
So that's pretty cool as well. We learn to walk. You would think the shape of our hips and everything would teach us, our arms being a bit weaker than our legs would teach us. You're supposed to be bipedal. You walk on two legs, but...
let's not go back
walk
to that.
Upright.
Thank you.
But that's apparently learned as well. People who were raised in jungles with monkeys learnt to climb trees. People who were raised with birds flail their arms as if they're wings. Raised by dogs, you walk on all fours. You're tetrapedal.
Tetrapedal. Oh, God, that sounds like twice as bad.
Weirdly enough, we talked about eating being an instinct.
Yes.
But these case studies would indicate that, while we know how to eat, food preference and taste is a learned behavior. You got any foods you don't like?
Yeah, I do actually. I olives.
Olives? You don't like olives?
No, you would have thought the amount of wine, cheese, chili, and all that type of stuff I eat, I'd really like olives, but I just cannot get into
Either of
olives.
your parents don't like olives?
No, they like olives.
Okay, do you know where it came from by chance?
I just tried olives once, didn't like them, and but it's funny though, because taste will change. Like obviously you don't feed a 3-year-old chili unless you want to have a terrible mess. But a chili's something that I've acquired as I got older. Cheese as well is something a taste I've acquired as I've got older. Still hate goat cheese though.
Yeah,
it tastes like
I don't really like ghost cheese either.
It tastes like someone's put metal in your cheese.
But that's it. But all of these tastes, you and I don't really like mushrooms all that much. I'll eat them if I have to, but I'm not going to actively seek out a mushroom. I'm not frothing on mushrooms being in my salad or anything like that, or on my pizza, for example.
Well, you wouldn't be very much fun to travel to Amsterdam with, would you?
Well, I would be. I'm just not going to do the mushrooms. But that's I found interesting is our taste or food preference is largely a learned behavior. So this means that we have to learn what to eat, not how to eat.
Yeah, look, I don't find that shocking, because if you look at it from a perspective of, you say have Indian families who cook a lot of curry and spices and stuff like that, and then you have a look at, say, your Anglo-Saxon Australian family where you use steak and veggies and things like that, brought up on that diet. You find that, they might not be able to tolerate chili as much as, say, a person from another culture. Likewise, then you have Japanese and Korean, Chinese, and a whole range.
Yeah, but that's could be, you could say, as an instinctive, because they've got the genetics, they've been bred up in those environments. But these kids that were brought up as feral children have prefer the taste of like raw meat to cooked meat and everything, and like that would be
also what you're used to.
pretty rare. Yeah, it's definitely a big part of what you're used to.
All I'm saying, Byrne, is that it's not as interesting as you made it out to be.
All right, well, can I just do a quick shout out to all the people that ate food initially and then found out it was poisonous for the rest of us to eat later on?
Yes, a moment of silence for them.
Maybe you'll find this more interesting. Perhaps the idea of self-awareness. We pride ourselves as humans on being self-aware. We look in a mirror and we know it's us. But that self-awareness might actually also be taught. A lot of these kids, when they were brought into communities of humans, they didn't realize they were human. They were one of them, and even showing them a mirror, they didn't recognize themselves. So the idea of self-awareness might even be taught, not instinctual.
Wow, that's interesting. So you should just tell us that and we've got the other stuff.
No, I was just trying to chuck it all in there.
No, it's not good.
Now, the whole idea of this translation from animals to human instincts was explored in the early half of the 19th century, largely by a guy called Konrad Lorenz. Now, he was an animal behaviourist. He sounds
like a porn star.
He does a bit, doesn't he? Konrad Lorenz. Now, he's an animal behaviourist, and he suggested that most human behaviours, including language, were instinctive, but over time, nowadays especially, geneticists, evolutionary biologists, they all chipped away at his ideas, and it's now thought that the human brain is far more plastic, especially when it's young, than we first thought. So we're able to learn a lot, and we're able to forget a lot over time. And that sort of supports the idea that language is set when you're young, but you can learn basic language skills as you get older. Okay.
It's funny because as we learn more about the human brain, we're realizing now that like even from like the teenage years and the teenage development, the developmental side of things, like teenagers are more likely to take risks, and that's all got to do with the brain developing and things. So we're finding that these behaviors are these reckless kids. It's the developmental. They don't quite understand the risk of what they're doing.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's the whole basic idea of like, oh, it's just kids will be kids, or that's just the way boys are, or the way people are. These ideas that we've always associated with instinctiveness might all be learned behaviors that we had no idea we were learning. We've acted as a sponge. Even teens taking risks could be a learned behavior. They're expected to take more risks, so they do.
Yeah, I thought it was more to do with the cognitive, like the development, not the cognitive development, the physical development of the brain.
They don't know what they're doing.
Well, they don't have that part of the brain assessing risk that hasn't developed as much as, say, an adult. Hence why very rarely you'll see an adult go 100 kilometers down the road, an hour down the road.
With their headlights off.
With their headlights off, as opposed to seeing a 16-year-old do it just for the thrill.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think there's also that whole adrenaline rush that kids enjoy too, and it's a lot easier to get an adrenaline rush when you're younger.
But in saying that, you look at it, it might be that they've, they might want to prove themselves as a male because that's a learned behaviour.
Well, it is.
Don't know, yeah.
But is that an instinctive thing where you have to beat your chest and grunt, or is that like a learned behaviour?
I always find it really funny. I always find it really funny because you just see these primitive, I guess, characteristics come out in people when they're really mad and about to get into a fight or something like that. Like they'll take their shirt off, or they'll flex their muscles, or they'll kind of walk over and
amp up
their chest and get in the person's face and push them, and it's just so primitive. It's an amazing thing to watch.
Well, it is, but those things like we think are instinctive are probably learned behaviours. You're more likely to be a violent person if you were brought up in a violent household, for example.
Yeah, but there's also the genetic aspect too that may have an influence on that.
Absolutely, but that's the whole argument, the nature versus nurture thing, isn't it? So you have a look at some of the fundamentals, and that's where I'm going to go in a sec, but you have a look at some of these ideas where what is nature and what's nurture? Like, can you be genetically predisposed to be violent? And like, yeah, you can, but if you're brought up in a household that has zero violence, is no expression of violence, then you don't learn how to be violent. Then you're not going to have that gene expressed,
Are you telling me, Byrne, that it's not black and white and it's grey?
It's all kinds.
Oh, God.
Who would have thought, right?
Who would have thought, eh?
It's grey again.
Every episode we say that because...
It's bloody true, though, isn't it?
It's true, but there's no easy way to go. There is not one sole thing that causes very, very, very extremely rare that there's one thing that is solely responsible for an outcome, especially to do with psychology and stuff like that and the social science. It's so rare, and that's why it's so complex. That's why we don't understand it as much as we do other fields,
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, when we get into that sort of idea, what about we look at some fundamentals behaviours that are essential to all humans? So violence is not an essential behavior. I would deem it not to be an essential behavior.
Yeah.
You know, I think like there's a much better ways around things than violence and things like that.
Yeah,
But-
it depends on obviously the area you live in and stuff like that.
So
too,
let's go from the hate end of the spectrum right down to the other end. So violence relates to hate. What do you reckon love relates to?
Compassion, sex.
Yeah. Let's talk about sex, baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cue the song.
So something basically fundamental like sex, is that an instinct or is that a learned behavior?
I would say it's instinctive.
You would, wouldn't you?
I would say it's instinctive because, like, once again, but you look at like the role of, you know, like, say, you can't just look at it as an individual saying all humans are like this. Like, different, you know,
But
like
do
you
you
look
think
at
humans develop and
homosexuality.
then-
Look at something like homosexuality.
But all right, well, let me rephrase it. What about sexual desire then? Not just sex necessarily. Sexual desire, is that instinctive or is that learned?
Depends what you classify as sexual desire, though.
Wanting to get your rocks off, mate. Come on, let's not get too beat down in the details here.
No, I'm just saying. That it's so like it's so complex. Though.
How much
Like,
did you want to bust a nut when you were 5?
Oh well, no, because you
How
physically
much did you
can't
want to
develop.
bust a nut when you were 15?
Oh, all over the place.
So is that an instinct or is that learned?
Well, yeah, but you look at say even just the hormones being produced in the body. Like, is there a variation in the chemicals in your body? Like that's.
But would that argue let's get into some of these ideas. Okay. So let's look at some uniquely human structures. Breasts are a great example. Great example. I love breasts. Okay. Beards are another one. Oh, you know what? Not picky. Yeah. A well-formed breast I can appreciate, you know.
Yeah.
But breasts and beards, okay, these are morphological structures and they indicate like a readiness to breed. Okay, so people who can't breed don't really develop breasts, and then when you grow a beard and you're a bloke, that's showing, hey, I got some testosterone flowing around now. Probably could shoot a couple loads out if you wanted to make a child with me. That's what they're for, though. Okay, these are like indicators of a readiness to breed from a biological
with
perspective.
my beard at the shops, going people's faces.
Ladies.
Ladies, what's up?
I noticed you've got breasts. That also indicates you are ready to breed. Yeah.
Hello, ladies. I see that you have breasts, and I've got a beard. How about we fornicate?
Yeah. I don't know if that'd work that well. I tell you what, if it
Preferably all at once.
did, yeah, if it did, I wouldn't want to fornicate with that girl. Tell you what, there'd be you want to get a penicillin shot after. That's all I'm saying. Now, but like, if you've got morphological displays, right? You've got these special features, physical features. Would that imply that it's instinctive because it's trying to trigger something in you, an instinct, a development?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. So, well.
So think about when girls get clucky, for example. Is that instinctive or is that a learned behavior? Like the maternal instinct. Now, the idea of this whole sexual desire, maternal instinct, you know, desire to breed, it fits so well with evolutionary theory, right? If you've got a desire to breed, you'll make more kids with a desire to breed.
Thus being more biologically successful.
Yeah, exactly. So if you don't have that desire to breed, you don't have that instinct to breed, then you won't, and then you're not going to produce young, then you're not going to pass that gene on, that desire to breed. So the idea that sexual desire and the need to have sex is self-evident is one of the things they say. But basically, there's a few studies that said maybe not. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's cases where this is indeed a learned behavior. Sexual desire can be learned, which is weird, I think. When you think it fits so well with evolutionary theory, we had a whole lot of evolutionary biologists go, well, this is self-evident. And then we've got a couple of scientists go, is it though? Because that's not science. Right, so a 2015 study in the International Journal of Organic Evolution found recurring patterns between parents and offspring in the age of their first attempt to produce a child. So if you have kids young, your kids are more likely to have kids young. That would imply that it's more of a learned behavior. If you live in a society where a lot of teen pregnancies happen, you're more likely to fall under that guise and be a teen pregnancy. Whereas if you're in a society where your parents had you a little bit later in life, and most people in your society have you later in life, then you're more likely to have children later in life as well.
Well, it's the same thing with integrating people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds into more well-to-do areas. Like how, like even in this area, North Shore, it's pretty well-to-do. But they also will have like housing commissions, down the road in which they're trying to obviously integrate people into the surrounding society, because obviously if they're friend, they go to school, they go to school with different people with socioeconomic backgrounds, different values, more emphasis on education, etc., etc. And that's not to say that people who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds can't do that. Completely false, but that's what the research is showing. It's more likely, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, that's sort of, there's another study here out of Kansas State University which suggests the desire to have a child, so this cluckiness, in both men and women, I should add, was significantly determined by their environment rather than their biology. So it's not instinctive at all. This desire to breed is indeed a learned behaviour. Wow. So that related it to their positive exposure to babies as well as their personal life circumstances. So what stage of life they're at. If they're studying and poor, they're less likely to think about having a children, or if they're, quite well established, they've got a good home, they're set up, then they're more likely to have children. If you've had negative influences with babies, they keep vomiting on you and things like that, you're less likely to want to have a child. If all of your friends are having kids, you're more likely to want to have a child as well. And all of these would suggest that this desire to have children is, instead of being instinctive, is more related to a learned behavior. You're learning from your peers and your surroundings and your circumstances, your environment. So that means your sexual desire, your desire to breed, is a learned behavior. This study did, I should say, said the hormonal aspect of baby fever should be more closely investigated. There isn't enough out there that suggests how hormones play a role in how clucky you get. You're feeling clucky, Wade? I've just popped out a kid.
Not really.
You didn't seem to mind coming around and chilling with me and the fam.
Where's this going?
I reckon you're pretty good with kids. That's all I'm saying. About friends that have kids, they seem to like you.
Oh, good.
Bit of a Pied Piper character.
Yeah, I like kids.
Now, all of this research seems to be in line with the more recent thinking on the instinct versus learned behaviour. What, believe it or not, most science says is there's an interplay between this idea of instinct versus things.
No way!
Yep.
My God, who would have thought, huh?
That's
who
right.
would have thought?
So basically what I'm saying is behavioural patterns, from sex to social interaction to language to basically everything, most likely contain components of both innate factors, so things we're born with, as well as ideas or actions we have developed or learned over time. This means that the question isn't whether a behaviour is learned, but rather how much learning has influenced the behaviour itself.
Wow, interesting.
So what is learned and what is instinctual? I think that's a terrible way to categorise it. I don't think anything is entirely instinctual or entirely learned. There is no human instinct. That would be my argument at the end. I'm probably way off. Any psychologists out there, please feel free to write in and tell me how I'm off.
And I'll write back to you and tell you how your field is a load of shit.
He's not even joking, I will.
I do not represent... Byrne represents himself on this issue, okay? I just want to make that nice and clear.
The thoughts and opinions expressed by me do not represent those of Sci-gasm podcast.
Yes, but rather an ignorant twat. Thank you very much for listening, guys. We appreciate the thousands of listens that we get, and we're so thankful that you guys tune in every week, and just consistently as well. Like, the numbers are so consistent each week.
Yeah, it's really quite flattering, and I do take a lot away from it. We get a lot of these ideas for episodes from our listeners.
Yeah.
If you've got an idea or something you'd like to hear us rip apart, let us know. Send us in a comment on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, or let us know on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us now on.
We've obviously got a Patreon account and things like that, which obviously help us run the show and help us fund the show and things like that. So we greatly appreciate all the help we get from that. So if you'd like to become a Patreon of the show, just visit patreon.com/Sci-gasm podcast. And as well, we'll also be appearing at the Pint of Science Festival as well, which is kind of
in
exciting.
Sydney. This is a global one, so if you've got Pint of Science, check them out. There'll be tickets near you somewhere.
Yep.
But we will be at the Sydney show. If you're in Sydney or near enough Sydney, come and say g'day.
On the 14th of May, we'll be at the Botany View Hotel in Sydney. These are all in Sydney. On the 15th of May, we'll be at the Royal Sydney. And on the 16th, we'll be at the Harold Park Hotel in Glebe.
All from 7 o'clock.
All from 7 p.m.
Tell us where they can get tickets, Wade.
You can get tickets from pintofscience.com.au. And so we'll be... There's a whole bunch of Sydney events on. So have a look at it. The May the 14th is the big and small of it. May 15th is It's Getting Hot in Here. And on May 16th, it'll be What the Quark.
What the quark?
What the quark?
That's what that's about.
So we'll be talking about climate change, technology, and quantum mechanics. So yeah, which is really kind of exciting. The areas that we're very passionate about. So you can get tickets at pioneerscience.com.au. So thanks very much, guys. Keep it real.